Hi, hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Ellie Asked. Today I'm joined by Jenny. Thank you for joining me, Jenny. Jenny is one of the other amazing women that I met through my business coach. She does some fantastic work around yoga and healing and all that sort of things. But I'll pass over to her to let her introduce herself and tell a little bit more about her business and herself. It's much better coming from you, Jenny, because you know it all. You live it, you breathe it. It's amazing. So welcome, Jenny.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so blessed to be here. So I'm Jenny. My business is Hands-On Harmony Yoga Health, and I am the creator of Inaya Yoga. Inaya Yoga is the beautiful blend of two ancient Vedic sciences, so yoga and Ayurveda. And I bring them both together in a really beautiful blend to empower women, help women find their aligned true health, what's right for them, and try and do it in a really down-to-earth way as well. So not kind of throw loads of Sanskrit at people so they just kind of get overwhelmed, and try and keep it quite down to earth, and show that it's a really personal experience as well.
Yeah, because you do a lot. Like I know that when we've had our coaching calls, you said, "Oh yes," and then if you eat this and this time and this things, so that was really interesting to me because I just thought, "Oh, it's yoga." Not that I know a great deal about yoga, but it's a whole bigger thing than that, isn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, yoga and Ayurveda are separate, but the way I kind of describe them is that they're two branches of the same tree. So even though there's different branches, they come from the same roots. And with yoga especially, there are 8 different parts to yoga, and the movement practice, the shapes, the asana, is we call it in Sanskrit, is literally 1/8 of what yoga is. So there's so much more to it, and I think sometimes when people just simply focus on making beautiful shapes, they still get the benefits because you get all the stretching and the strengthening, but there's a hidden magic to it as well, which gets unveiled when you embrace all the other sides to it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Yoga is definitely something that I have always fancied doing and never really did it because, and I know we've had these conversations before,
Yeah.
well, I'm not very flexible. And you're like, well, that's why you do yoga, because you can get there and don't worry about it and you'll get there eventually and all that sort of stuff. Because you do some online, an online subscription, don't you, where people can pay. So actually they don't need to be local to you to come to you. So yeah, so
No.
what I'll do is when I'll put all your details for your groups and everything on so that people can find you. Right. So today's question, we kind of touched on this question. I've kind of touched on this question with a previous guest, but only slightly. And I'm really pleased that you've chosen this question, Jenny, because I think it's massive. I think it's huge. I think it's the thing that really drives me forward, which it makes me think how I behave and how I deal with situations and those sort of things. So it's all about values. So your question is like, it's a 2-parter actually, wasn't it? What are your most important values? How are they reflected in your life and in your daily decisions? Huge, dead, meaty topic.
Yes.
Love it. Go on. What are your values? What are your most important values, and how did you come to them? Yeah, go for it.
Well, I think first and foremost, a big one for me is making sure that I stay true to myself. So really honoring who I am, the light side, the dark side, embracing all of it, and making sure that I stick with that.
Almost being authentic. Like
Yes,
being authentically
absolutely.
you. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and having that integrity and everything. And when I was younger, I was kind of pushed along the way, all with good intentions, to pursue a career that wasn't me at all. And I went to university. I loved my university years, and I had a great time. But I ended up going down the path of law, and practiced in law for 4 years after I graduated. And it just wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. And every day I had that sick feeling of going to work, that sickness of having to almost put on this costume. Every time I put my suit on, it was like putting on a costume. Yeah, like putting a mask on, of pretending to be this person that I wasn't, and going into the office and having to have these really difficult conversations with people that were arguments, really, and that's just not me at all. And it went against so many things that I believe in, about trying to find the peace in everything, trying to create the greater good. It was just all about money and making money for the bigger people who don't really need that money, and taking it from the people that do need that money. And it used to make me, I used to go home and be physically sick, because it was so out of alignment with what I wanted to do.
I think that I find that with values, sorry to interrupt, I think I find that with values, that you find that it niggles and it makes you, if it attacks one of your values, if there's something there that you know, for you obviously it was quite extreme, it made you physically sick, but I know there's that, like, that funny feeling, when you get that funny feeling in your gut and your stomach, and you think something, or your chest gets to feel a bit tight, and you think and it's something's going on in your head. And I often think, what's going on? Something's attacking one of my core values, something is attacking, and what is it about it? And I think once I find that, I can either accept it, change it, move on, do, if it's within my capacity to change it, then I will change it. But if not, then it that acceptance comes much quicker for you, for me. How was it? So at what point did you decide, no, this is attacking too much of my core values around authenticity and alignment?
I didn't really, I didn't always see that was what was happening. I thought maybe I've got a tummy bug, or I'm sick again, or, you know, I've got food poisoning. But I was constantly ill. And it took me quite a while 4 years to get to the point of understanding what it was. But I was quite lucky in some ways, because I was introduced to yoga by my mum. Mum was introduced to yoga when she was 16, so she's been doing yoga a long time, and she introduced me to yoga when I was about 10 or 11, and it's always been part of my life from that point. So I used to meditate and practice breathing techniques, especially if I felt anxious before, you know, for example, when I was in that job, when I had to go to court and when I had trials and things, I'd use my breathing techniques or meditate and visualize and things like that. So yoga was always an anchor and always something that made me feel like me. So I used to love going home and do my yoga practice, do some meditation, to almost strip away all the yuckiness of the day and get me back to who I was. And it was through that meditation practice that I came to the realization that I cannot live this inauthentic life until I retire. And it was, I think it was probably about 3 years in, maybe, that I thought I've got to come up with a plan of how to make a change.
We before we started recording, we talked a little bit about finding your values and how you knew what your values were, and I asked if you did any sort of value work around it, and you said no, which I found really interesting. So how did you know, how do you know what your values are? So we've covered one, but how did you find them? I'm just thinking for the listeners to go, oh, okay, maybe this whole value stuff is worth looking into. How did you find yours?
You know what really works for me is meditation. And meditation, I think sometimes people hear that word and think, oh gosh, I have to sit on the top of a mountain in a saffron robe and go Yeah, exactly. And it's just not that at all. It's really not. Meditation is simply finding a quiet space, whether that be for 2 minutes or half an hour, whatever you've got, and watching your breath. So by that I mean closing your eyes and just follow your breath as you breathe in, feel it enter your body, and then follow your breath as you breathe out. And you just do that until you find that the chattering of your mind starts to quieten down. Or when the thoughts come through, you acknowledge that they're there, but you just let them pass. And once we get past all that chattering of other people's opinions, of the propaganda of the media, you should be this, you should be that, that's when our inner teacher, our real self, has space to come forward and start talking. And for me, that has been how I've found me and my values. It's not been an overnight thing. It's something that's taken years of practice. And some days it's easier for me to tune into that than others. Some days I'll sit down and I'll do my meditation practice and all I've got are thoughts whizzing. Or my little girl might come through and go, "Mummy, I need this, I need that." But as long as I keep bringing myself back to my breath and following the breath, I find that I'm much more aligned with and authentic with who I am for the rest of the day. Even if I might think I've not had a successful meditation practice, I've given my mind that time and that attention, and my heart and my soul that attention as well.
Right, great.
So meditation's been the biggest thing for me to tap into my values. It might not work for everybody. Some people might need, real steering and asking sort of leading questions maybe and things like that. But for me, meditation and definitely yoga as well, just unlocking that stiffness and that energy and those blocks in the body, in the mind, has just allowed everything else to flow.
You also mentioned that after having your daughter, that was a big thing for you with regards to your values, that almost like it went, boom, almost like, no, this is how I'm going to do it. You want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of a happy-go-lucky kind of girl, happy to go along with the majority, and I'm happy to do whatever. And I've always felt that was the easiest thing. And as long as nothing ever kind of really upset me in those moments, that's when I kind of, and I have lost friends over the years when I've said, no, that's not right. I don't like this anymore. I'm stepping away. And at the time that was difficult, but obviously now I've got other friends who are more aligned with my values. But becoming a mum, really, it just amplified everything, because I thought, I can't be this wishy-washy person who doesn't stand up for what I believe in, because I've got her to think about now as well. So my responsibility is to protect her, to raise her, to make sure that she's safe and she's in a world that, I feel is right. So it just, like I say, it just amplified everything for me. When she came along, it was like, okay, no more. No.
Yeah.
Not standing for any BS anymore.
And I found this really interesting because for me, my values didn't come, we had a quick chat beforehand and said, they didn't come. I thought that's really interesting that when I had my first daughter, I was still very much thinking, right, well, I need to do this, I need to do this to be a good mum. So society says this, I need to make sure that I, raise my children like I don't work, and work like I don't have any children, and my house needs to be spotless, I need to be looking, clean, tidy, presentable, all those sorts of things. And it wasn't until I did an exercise around values and working out those things that really irked me, those things that really annoyed me, and almost like the opposite of those are actually my core values, that I realised that what was important to me when it came to my children was more important than making sure I'd loaded the dishwasher or unloaded the dishwasher, or there weren't pots on the side. If somebody came round prior to working out my values, I would have been like, I wouldn't have even let them in the door, because thinking, oh gosh, my house is a mess. What will you think of me? I'm trying to please everybody, people pleaser, that sort of thing. But as soon as I'd got my core values aligned, I thought, actually, no, my children need my attention. Let's play games. Let's, let me love them. Let me show them that I'm listening to them. No, mummy, there was none of no, mummy will come play with you once I've loaded the dishwasher sort of thing. And there is an element of that. I'm not saying that I give my attention to my children all of the time, all day, every day. But there's definitely if they want me and they can't do it themselves, or they need some support in something, or I can give that time, then I absolutely will, because love is a huge one of my values, and that to show them I love them, and to show them that I'm listening to them and I value them as people, as a role model, like a bit like what you were saying, I've got these, they're looking to me, like, and I was looking to you about how to present themselves in the world, and I suppose that's the thing, you don't want to show them that you go, there's an element of going, oh yeah, I'm quite happy to go along with things, but you kind of don't, you want them to have a bit more of a, this doesn't feel right to me. And I think one of the things that really came with my core values as well is that I always used to, if there's something I disagreed with, unless I felt really strongly about it, I never said anything. And I almost felt that meant that my silence was an agreement with people, almost like if at work, if people were chitter-chatting about somebody, I always thought, well, if I don't say anything, I'm not joining in. But almost by not saying something was agreement, and that didn't sit right with me. So once working at my cover, I go, oh, hang on a minute, that's not true, because they said this and this. I heard them do this, or I heard them say this, and I saw that they did this. And just to put a different perspective on things, because that really attacked one of my core values of being authentic and genuine and those sort of things. So what else comes up for you? What are your other authenticity? What other core values have you got, and how do they shape your life?
Well, love, I think, is definitely a big one for me as well. And I remember reading a fabulous book a few years ago about the different ways that people show love, and the different ways that people understand love. And I think it was called the language of love or something like that. And some people, they translate love by the amount of time that you give them, by the amount of affection. Some people, it's the words that you use. Some people, it's gifts. And I think there was another one, I can't remember the other one. But so for me, like you were saying, about the dishwasher and things like that. When I very first had my daughter, I was very much like, right, no, everybody needs to tell us when they're coming. I need to get the house right. And I forgot to eat because I was so obsessed with feeding her and making sure that she was okay, but then making sure that the house looked as though nothing had changed. And I drove myself potty. And I think there was a moment where I was so upset, and I just said to my husband, I'm not doing this anymore. If anybody comes in and they judge us, they don't deserve to be here. And from that point on, and I've got some beautiful friends, some who came in and were like, let me do the washing up for you, or let me make you a cup of tea, or Jen, is there anything I can do for you? Can I put the washing on? Or, some real beautiful people. And it was almost their behavior then that showed me the people who weren't doing that. So if there were other people coming in, we might say, oh, do you mind just putting the kettle on? And other people then felt more involved, and rather than an outsider
or a burden. You don't want to be a burden, do you? When you go and see a new family and see a new baby, you're like, can I help with anything? Do you? Because I think more so if you've had your own children. I felt incredibly guilty. I've got a friend, my friend Jane, who had her children 5 or 6 years before I had my first, and my friend Jo. And it wasn't until I had my eldest that I was like, oh my goodness, I was such a terrible friend, but I didn't get it. I just didn't understand that whole, that wonderful newborn bubble, but also those sleepless nights. And like you say, trying to get all the house ready and feeding them and just making sure they're all right. And then actually you come bottom of the pile and all that sort of thing. And I just felt incredibly guilty. And I think I messaged him and said, I'm so sorry. Like, I was a terrible friend. I just swanned it. But I wasn't. It's just perspective, isn't it? It's just an acknowledgement that I didn't know what you were going through because I've not been through it. And I think when then my friends had children after I had children, I was probably more likely to be one of those friends we made them a lasagna, or, you know, you rocked up and said, what can I do? Let me take the baby. Where do you want to go for a shower? You're like, oh my gosh, a shower without a baby in the room in the bouncer, right? Because they're right, I've got about 5 minutes now, quick, get in, or they're asleep, go in the shower. You know, you just don't get it, do you, until you've had children. So, but yeah, I hear you, that one, definitely.
Yeah. And I think with that kind, for me, the way I value, one of my love languages, I would say, is definitely time. So if the amount of time that somebody wants to spend with me, or if they've got time for me, that for me shows me that they love and care for me. Now, that person's love language might be slightly different. So for them, it might be the words that they use. And I've come to realize that with different people in my connections, they show their way. And, you know, for some people, it's the gifts that they give, you know, that's their way of showing love. So with Inaya, my daughter, one of my values I've come to realize is making sure that I understand what her love languages are. And partly, I think what she's learned to be love is from what I show her. So giving her my time, telling her that I love her, we're very affectionate. So making sure that when she says, Mummy, will you come and play with me? Like, of course, everything else can wait. You know, and something that I always come back to is, if this was my last day, is this what I would be doing? Would I be trying to get to the bottom of the washing pile? Would I be trying to, you know, stack all my plates in the right order? You know, would I be hoovering everything? Would I, you know, hell no. I'd be spending all my time with people that I love.
I think that's one of the things that I often say to my coaching clients is, if this was your last day, or if you were on your deathbed and you looked back at your life, do you wish you'd, you know, spent more time stacking your plates in the right order? Do you wish you'd made sure that you'd cleaned your skirting boards every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. or whatever, you know, weekly and things like that, you know? Or do you wish you'd spent more time with, you know, family and friends? And generally, I think, you know, I think there's been a bit of research around sort of deathbeds and what do people wish they'd done more of, and it always comes down to relationships. It always comes down to people and time. Often, I think now as well, that thing about time really hit me, because Anna, on one of my previous podcasts, she came on, she was brilliant, great, and I messaged her afterwards and just said thank you, because actually we chatted for quite a long time after we'd finished recording, and she's got 3 children and a husband and a house, and you know, and she's busy, she's got her own business like we all have, but she just gives me her time and attention, and I float ideas with her, and she's like, oh yeah, that could work, but she never is keen to rush off. And I just messaged her and I said, thank you so much for your time. I always feel really special in her company. She always, you know, and that, I suppose maybe that's my love language, actually. I often say to my husband, you know, we just listen to what I have to say, you know, and he's great, and don't get me wrong, he does listen, but I think, like, whole smartphones and, you know, technology, I think we are very much like this a lot of the time, and I think people feel like they're losing that connection. So maybe connection is one of my values again, or listening, I think, is maybe something that has come up for me more recently.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely agree about the smartphone thing as well, because both myself and my husband work from home, and we have, everything's on your phone now, isn't it? So your emails, your text messages, phone calls, everything. And there are so many times that I'll say, oh, can I just run this by you, or blah blah blah, and we'll be talking, yeah, I agree, yeah, that's, and I'll say, put your phone down and look at me, and And there was a trigger the other day, I think, for both of us, because we were all together, but I was checking emails on my phone, and I think he was checking emails on his phone. And our little girl, she was singing, and she said, "Put your phones down, mummy and daddy, look at me."
Wow.
So I was like, right, that's it. They're going in a drawer. We're not looking at them for the rest. Emails can wait. If anybody's got something urgent, then they'll ring us.
Yeah.
So we put them in the drawer, and that's kind of the new thing, I think, because even if you're present with somebody, you can be physically there, but you might be somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and how often do people actually really listen to you? And I think that's the beauty of coaching that I do, is that I am there with my coaching client and I am just listening. It's just all about them. My mind is with them. I've got a phone with me. I don't listen. And that for me is so powerful. And people find that so powerful because like people do listen, but I think they often listen to answer, in a conversation, or they're just waiting for somebody else to finish talking so that they can say their part, a little bit like today, because we're going backwards and forwards, it's a conversation. Or they're just listening, waiting for them to stop so they could give some advice or tell them what to do, rather than just listening for understanding. And I think understanding listening is really powerful, and I think maybe that's where I'm coming from. Like, my daughter said the same thing something similar the other day. She said, "Oh, adults are always on their phones," and I was just like, wow, that's huge, isn't it, when they see, from the mouth of babes, that they actually go, we need to put it down and go, I'm present with you, I'm there, I'm here. But I think particularly, like you say, everything's on your phone. You're so busy when you're trying to run a business as well, that it's like I'll often say to my husband, what are you doing? He'll be like, I'm just answering work emails. He's not obviously not at work, he's at home answering work emails. So like, technology is amazing, but it has its pros and cons, obviously, doesn't it? So it's it's a bit of a hindrance sometimes, but a massive help as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a balance, isn't it? It's like everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Ayurveda teaches us, is to bring ourselves into balance all the time. It's always about finding that balance and having that real self-awareness as well. But sometimes we can get wrapped up in things, and we need, that moment where our children say something that makes us go, boof, okay, I'm awake now, I get it.
I think we're coming towards the end of the episode, so I just wanted to finish with saying thank you so much, and thank you for an insight into a bit more about what you do and some of your values. I think the discussion around values is really important. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I think for people listening, I think both of us are talking about how important they are, and actually, so maybe have a go at doing some meditation like Jenny suggested. It's something that I find really difficult. It's something that I don't do often enough, I think, because I have a lot of chatter, so I need to get rid of that chatter. So I've got to keep practicing. But for me, values have absolutely made my path through life much clearer, much more clarity around the things I believe and the things that I want for me and my family and the things that are most important to me. And then other things, like you say, those things can wait. Thanks again. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Anybody who does struggle with meditation or struggles with their minds being busy, the yoga, the movement practice of yoga was actually, that part was developed to help to move your body and release tension and things, so that when you sit into meditation, you're much more likely to feel more relaxed. So doing meditation after you've moved your body in yoga, or go for a run or a walk or something like that, move your body, and then once you've done that, you're probably more likely to settle down and have that quiet headspace.
Fab. Perfect tip to finish the episode on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.